Eastern Oregon. And I titled this Volcanoes and Vistas, Basin and Range, because that's kind of what Eastern Oregon is made up of. A lot of volcanoes, a lot of great views, the Great Basin and open range. Whoops. So if you want to get up to this area, one of the ways you can go is drive. And I'm going to start with a road trip driving up through California up on 395. I've got Weed here as a stopping point on the time that I drove up here. It's kind of a long ways, but that was the first stop. And then the next stop was Crater Lake. And on the way up, you're going to see Mount Shasta. If you're lucky and it's clear from I-5, you can see Mount Lassen. And the Sierras kind of fade away, and the Cascade range of volcanoes starts to show up with Mount Lassen and then Mount Shasta. This is a view of Mount Shasta kind of from the north side. It's a little different than the first view you get when you're driving north. It just sort of looms up there on your drive as a more of a straight peak, more of a volcano-shaped peak on the south side as you drive up, and then you see this. So Mount Shasta, you keep going. This is different here. What's it doing? Okay. And it's not too much farther till the next big former volcano at Crater Lake. That's kind of our first stop in Eastern Oregon today. Crater Lake is the result of a huge, whoops, let's go back. A huge volcano that was around for erupting in various smaller stages for about 400,000 years that they figured out. And 7,700 years ago, which is not that long in geologic time, it basically totally blew its top. Just a massive eruption of this 12,000 foot peak volcano that had built up over the years. And it was so massive that the mountain itself just sort of collapsed into this giant caldera, which then filled up with glacial water. And if you haven't been there, this is a beautiful national park. The lake is the deepest lake in North America, or at least in our country. I think it's the deepest lake in all of North America, and at about almost 2,000 feet deep. It's beautiful, deep blue color, and it doesn't have any. It doesn't have any rivers or anything coming in or out of it. It has snow melt from the whole the whole outside of it. The whole caldera melts into the lake, and rainwater and snow, and it's just beautiful. So this is another view of it when there was some snow on the ground. It gets very, very snowy. Lots of snow in the winter, and this is Wizard Island, one of the smaller cones that came up in the volcano's caldera. So we're going to go on to some more volcanoes. And once you get up to Crater Lake, a lot of this stuff isn't very far. You can see a lot of cool stuff without having to travel too far. So in a couple of hours, you're up to Lapine State Park, which is kind of a cool place to stay because it's a state park that has little camping cabins in it that you can reserve. And it's around a lot of really good stuff. The Deschutes National Forest is huge, and part of it includes the Newberry Crater National Monument. This is another big giant caldera that was all volcanic stuff. The Newberry Volcanic National Monument. Okay, I guess now I got national in there twice. So you've got thousands of acres of lakes, lava flows, geologic features. Paulina Peak is the highest point in this monument. And if you get up there, you can see all kinds of cool views and the very, very large Newberry caldera that goes across the high desert. these two lakes here are lakes within the caldera, not as big as Crater Lake, but they're really volcanic lakes, like, you know, similar with a caldera that's filled in.
How interesting this is going to be.
This is all National Monument. This is the Lapine State Park I mentioned. It's right next to the
First they showed we were supposed
somebody
to
here
back up
needs to
395 into or.
okay. Yeah, these little camping cabins are really cool. They have wooden bunk beds that you can just put your pad and sleeping bed on, and bathrooms inside, which is really handy and nice. And you can reserve them, and they're right next to the Deschutes River. So it's a nice place to camp there. One of the features at Newberry Craters is this black or it's called Giant Butte. Anyway, it's a big butte. It's like 500 feet high, volcanic formation that you can walk up to the top of. I don't know if I included a picture. Yeah, so here's I first visited this area with a Sierra Club national national outing. So this is a photo of our group looking out over from the top of that Black Butte down into this whole field. And if you can see in the background here, you see it's all black, and then there's some trees that start. So all this black section is volcanic lava flow. And you can walk around out there. This is some other areas along here. There's places where you can see how narrow the streams are. There was, at this point, the lava flow blocked off just basically dammed up a river, and then it broke through and created a waterfall. But eventually the river eroded away this volcanic dam. This is a really interesting thing here. This is called this is the volcanic karst forest. This lava flow was only about 2,000 years ago. This is a smaller flow from the same volcanic area. And there were some very, very big ancient old growth trees, and the lava flowed over the trees and around them. And of course, it was so hot that the trees just disintegrated and burned, but it was cooling enough that it just cast these holes where the trees were. Let me show you another one so here's one that's above ground, where the lava just went up against a tree trunk, formed around the tree trunk. The tree trunk, of course, burned, and inside is this hollow cast of a tree. So you can walk around this lava karst forest, and that's another really interesting place there in the National Monument. There's a trail there that goes for maybe a mile or so around a bunch of these formations. Some are down in the ground and some are above ground. Another very cool place was the Big Obsidian Flow. These are huge pieces of obsidian. These are, let's see if it's just like glass. I don't know how many folks are familiar with obsidian, but it is volcanic glass, sharp as glass, beautiful rock. And this is the most I've ever seen in one spot. Let's see, here's a big mound of it. And this is, I couldn't tell you how high this is, but it's a probably 10-foot high mound of obsidian. Just a most unusual thing to see. And you can walk around up on this Big Obsidian Flow. There's another photo of it, just coming out of the darker volcanic rock up there. The obsidian, I think, is the stuff that cools really fast. This is a waterfall in that area that was formed, I don't know how long ago, Pretty Falls. And within this whole area are the Cascade Mountains are on the kind of far west side of the volcanic area. They are volcanic they are volcanoes. This is a one of the sisters. This is South Sister, and you can see it looks volcanic, but we took a hike up there, not to the mountain, top of the mountain, but around it in this area. There's some kind of a weird little formation, and there's another one of the mountains in the area called Broken Top. This was a trail that we took that was about a 8 or 10 mile round trip hike. It's one of the most popular wilderness hikes in Oregon. It goes up, it's called the Green Lake Falls River Trail or something like that. And you walk up this along this river that has lots of little waterfalls. It's the most popular wilderness. Okay, 9 miles round trip. The recent lava flows impounded these lakes, and then you have an 1,100-foot elevation gain, 9 miles round trip. So it's not too bad, but it's a hike. And here's some more falls along that river. It's just called Falls River because there's so many waterfalls. As you walk along that creek, here's another hillside that's just covered with obsidian. This is not part of that Big Obsidian Flow, but it's a similar formation. And then you get up towards closer to the mountain of you get Sisters, South Sister on one side, and Broken Top over to the right that we'll see. And you've got these 2 beautiful lakes up here. This is Broken Top. All right, so I'm going to go back to Broken Top and maybe pause here in case I'm not looking at the chat. I want to see if there might be any questions or anything at all that anybody wants to ask. And if not, we can move on.
People are introducing themselves
Okay.
at this point and saying hello.
Good.
So why don't we keep going? We have quite a few people introducing.
Okay.
And everyone, post your questions in the chat, and I can feed them to Marianne because she can't easily see it while she's presenting.
Yeah, and just keep. All
Yeah.
right, so this is Broken Top. Obviously, you can see why. So from this area of volcanic action, we're going to move on to Smith Rock State Park, Crooked River, and John Day Fossil Beds National Monument. I'll explain this sign in a minute on another slide. So in another hour, which, not too far, you get yourself up to Smith Rock State Park. And this is something that seems like it should be in Utah, but it's really pretty formations. And I don't have any pictures that really do it justice. It's a very tall rock and all the surrounding formations with the Crooked River running through it. Lots of climbers go here to climb up to the top of Smith Rock. And you can walk all around along the river. It's really, really pretty and different for what you would think you would see in Oregon. So this is Smith Rock State Park, not far. The Crooked River runs through Smith Rock, and once you get a little bit north of there, there's this pullout that it's just a little park you can go to, and there's this sign in the parking lot, and I didn't quite figure out why they would have this sign, but you walk along the plateau here, and the drop off is just immediate to the river. And I can imagine it would be so sad and scary, but you can imagine this happening with an excited dog, because you just come to the edge and it's a straight drop off down 300 feet to the river at this park. And there was a little kid the first time I went to this location asking his mom very sadly why the dogs die here, but it's a good sign. Keep your dogs in the car or on a leash because they could just jump off. But it's a really pretty little canyon there. So this is near Smith Rock State Park. So from there, since you're already here in this really nice area of Bend, Sisters, Black Butte, this whole area, and the Deschutes River, Sun River is a resort area. This whole area down in here, where Bend and Sun River are, that's gotten to be a really resort. And you know, there's golf, there's hiking, there's mountains and lakes so close. You've got Mount Bachelor ski area. So it's a really popular area. And one time I've been up there, I just stayed here and then just made this as a day trip out to John Day Fossil Beds National Monument. So it's not super far, but it's well worth the trip. Mitchell is a little town near the National Monument that you can actually stay in at this historic Mitchell hotel. It's kind of cool, one of those old, very old historic hotels that wouldn't be what you would call high end, but it was a nice place to stay, and it's close to the Fossil Beds National Monument, which we're going to go to next. So John Day Fossil Beds National Monument has actually 3 sections. You're not actually going to go there and find fossils. What you would do would be first to go to this called the Painted Hills Unit. You would then go also want to go to the main visitor center, which has amazing displays of the various eras of fossils that they've discovered out here. But you're not going to go there and actually see the fossils. But it's a huge area for what do you call the people that look at fossils? Anyway, for scientists to
Paleontologist.
Right.
paleontologists, thank you. Yes, for paleontologists to look through the fossils, and they have depictions of all the different eras of the various animals that they have found that lived throughout the different eras. So this is the Painted Hills Unit, and these hills are just amazingly beautiful, especially if you happen to get there after a rain that brings the colors out even more. I'll just run through a few pictures. There's hiking trails through here. There's lots of signs that say stay on the trails because they don't want people walking around on these hills and disturbing the colors. Julianne, yes.
Marianne, a couple of questions.
Sure.
Is this area around John Day, what's the elevation there? Is that considered part of the Great Basin?
It's part of the Great Basin. Yeah, the elevation, I'm not sure what it is. It's not going to be high, but it might be 3,000 or 4,000 feet. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
It looks like Badlands. It looks like Badlands National Park, very similar.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And those are the questions so far.
Okay.
I'll just kind of put my hand up when we have some questions come in.
Okay. So this is just one of the views you get walking along the trail. Okay, this is just a slide about, you know, you want to start at the Paleontology Center and see the fossils and learn about the you know, you can see fossils there. You can see the displays of all the different ages of mammals and the information that's on this slide. So it's all in one place, covering all this span of time of the different animals that lived in this area. Things that look like weird dogs and cats and bears and all kinds of interesting things. So you want to go there and you want to go here to the Painted Hills Unit and just see all this amazing geology. It's really, really beautiful to see in person. Pictures don't do it justice. Just different colors. Then the next part is a separate unit. It's called the Sheep Rock Unit. And this unit has this bluish canyon that we walked up into. It's kind of pretty. There's a little creek at the bottom. And then from there, you can go on over and see the John Day River. And there's a town called John Day. John Day River runs through quite a bit of this area, and can be quite a big river. This spring, because of the huge snow, this river was roaring. I had a friend that was going to raft it in April, and they had to put off the trip because the water was just way too high. So this is the John Day River. And this is going to kind of finish this trip in this part of Eastern Oregon, because the next section is going to be way over east on the very far eastern side, almost to Idaho. In fact, a lot of folks that came on this trip flew into Boise and then drove to these areas that we're going to visit here. You can go the long way and drive up there, but you could fly into Boise and get to these places within a couple, 3 hours. So we're going to move on to what I would call the basin and range part of this trip after we've seen all the volcano part, and take a look at what's over here. So the first place that I stopped on this trip, and this was just a trip this last spring, was the Pillars of Rome. There's a town called Rome, Oregon, that has, I don't think it even has a gas station. There wasn't much there. There was a place you could get a burger, and maybe there was a gas station next to it, but there was not much else there. No hotel, nothing else. And but there's the Pillars of Rome, which were pretty interesting. Here's another view of another side of it. It's really not something you can just walk up to and climb around. There's a lot of ranch land here and barbed wire and private land, so it's not all public lands, but you can at least get a good view of it. And from Rome, we moved on to Jordan Valley to start a trip on the wild and scenic Owyhee River. This is the place where rafts would put in. These are some folks that were just going down the river. But this is where the trip I was on started, to go down the wild and scenic Owyhee through the Owyhee River Canyon in Jordan Valley. But before we got on the river, we explored around. This is kind of the scenery in this range type of area, rolling ranch land, big hills like this. Some of these hills that were a little higher had quite a bit of snow on them still in April, like 26, I think, when we were there. It's high country, about 5,000 feet elevation, I think, maybe 4, somewhere in that range. And we went out here just to meet up with a geologist from the Friends of the Owyhee, who took us on a whole day of exploring and teaching us about the geology in this area. And while we were out here, one of the ranchers came up and started talking to us. So that was pretty interesting. So this is part of that hike that we took with this ranger, not really a ranger, an employee, a staff member from Friends of the Owyhee. And if you'll notice up here in the far left, there's a mountain with some snow on it. And we're down quite a ways from there. But this is another of these big calderas that are in Oregon. This one is about, I believe it was about 17 miles across, this huge caldera. And then within the caldera, all these formations have been eroded away or risen up, or whatever the geology is over the years. But this was part of a giant volcanic caldera that we were kind of hiking down into some of the features of it, and had a great geology lesson from the Friends of the Owyhee staff member, Sammy. This is just some of what we saw on one of the hikes. This is the second hike I think that we took there up into these canyons. After hiking around that area, we came out, and the next day we hiked over to Jordan Craters. So this is in the same area around between Jordan and between Rome and Jordan Valley. I'm sorry. This is over close to Jordan Valley. This is a big crater that you can drive right up to and look around and see all this interesting stuff. So it was another volcano that at some point erupted, left this little crater, and to the outside of it, you can see this huge lava flow. This was an interesting little like open lava tube, although right down in here, it went underground, and there was a lava tube there that one of our participants went about 10 feet into, and then she said that was as far as she could go. But you could walk all over this big field of lava, and then it just kind of peters out into high country sage. So this was Jordan Crater. And then here we are going down to see the Owyhee Canyon, which is really, really remote, even in Jordan Valley, where we stayed to do this exploring. There's a gas station. You go check into the motel at the gas station. There was no Wi-Fi anywhere. There was no restaurant. There was a little coffee place that was quite new, but it's really remote out here. There's not much in the way of population. A lot of ranchers, a lot of BLM land that is BLM public land, but it's used for grazing, and there's always a potential for other extractive uses when it's BLM land. But for now, it's somewhat pristine, other than a lot of evidence of cows everywhere. So we put into the river here and started a journey down the canyon. And the farther we went down the canyon, the more interesting the geology became. And the canyon walls got higher and higher. Yes, go ahead, Julianne.
Couple of questions about this area. Well, first of all, how is the BLM land different than National Forest land? Is it managed differently? Is it just used different, or allows more commercial use than National Forest?
No, National Forests allow a lot of commercial use. National Forest land is the land of many uses under the Department of Agriculture. BLM land is similar. It can be used for grazing, extractive industries, you know, a very large amount of our conservation lands are under the BLM. And in fact, the deadline was yesterday, although I believe they extended it by another month. I have to look that up. But the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, was in the process, or is in the process of redefining their rules on conservation lands and having more of a focus on conservation rather than other uses. So there was a public comment period that I think may have been extended. If anybody on the call knows more about that than I do, as far as it being extended beyond the 20th.
Yeah, I just, this is Lorraine, and I just typed in the chat that I just saw this afternoon that it's July 5th.
Okay, new deadline is July 5th. So that would be something that, you know, that I'll share after this meeting, the way to make comments on or a little bit of information about it, and then how to make comments on the BLM changing their rules to prioritize conservation on their public lands, which would be a really good thing if they do that. Thanks, Lorraine.
Marianne, another question about this area is
Mhm.
this area still volcanically active? Are there any hot springs, gas areas like we see in Mono County here in California? What's
There
this?
are hot springs throughout the Oregon desert region. There are some hot springs. There are some hot springs in Idaho, right over the border. I don't know that I think there's geothermal activity. I don't know if I don't know that there's any active volcanic activity, but there is still geothermal stuff going on in the way of hot springs and underground water that's hot moving around. So this was a hike from the river down below up to this area that they called the what did they call this? Pruitt's Castle. This was just a formation that was called Pruitt's Castle because it looks like a castle. And we hiked up here from the river. This is just one of the campsites we had along the river. The river is really high here. The flow was very good for rafting. And we had excellent weather. It had snowed the week before, so we were pretty happy to have sunshine. This is some more of the weird formations along the river. I think this was actually on the hike up towards that Pruitt's Castle we saw a minute ago. It was very green. It was unusually wet up there. There was still, like I mentioned earlier, snow in places along the hills, and a lot of green along where we were stopping along the river, which is not kind of unusual. This is a view of going down the river and the canyon walls getting a little higher as we go. It's the front of the raft there. And we've floated into what the section of the canyon that they call a Green Dragon, where the walls go up to about 800 feet and they get really interesting. And unfortunately, I don't have very many pictures of that portion of the trip, but it was really, really pretty. And you'll notice this formation looks kind of like that John Day area. Very similar in the way it's shaped and different colors. And this is just along the way in the canyon. This is an area that there's not a way to get to this other than down the river, unless you were to spend the whole time hiking, and backpacking to get here, because there aren't roads. It's very, very remote. Here's another spot where the canyon walls are pretty high. And this was a friendly visitor, not so friendly visitor that I found. I was walking down from my campsite to the edge of the river and saw this guy. I was fortunately watching where I was stepping because we knew it was rattlesnake time. And he was very long. I think you can see in this picture on the left that he goes for quite a long ways. He had 14. I didn't stop to count it while I was seeing him, but I took a picture and there were 14 rattles, which is quite a few. He was a long guy. Just walked off into some rocks and was not a problem, but a little unsettling right below our tents. And here's our tents. A couple of us we camped along the river wherever we could find a place, and the rafting company supplied tents. I don't know why this is in here. I must have missed taking that one out. That's a whole nother place. This is Great Basin National Park in Nevada. So we're going to ignore this and save that for another presentation. The river was so high and the roads were washed out. So instead of being taken out at the place that they'd planned to take us out, we had to go all the way down into the lake. Owyhee River is dammed into a lake. And the interesting part of the Owyhee River Dam is that dam was a prototype for Lake Mead Dam, for Hoover Dam. This dam was built before Hoover Dam, dammed up this much smaller river, a much smaller scale, but it was a prototype of how that sort of a dam would work. And the Owyhee River is dammed up into this lake that we're just barely getting into the end of the lake here. And we went a ways on this. It's a little slow rafting when it's a lake. The guides have to really work at it to get moving because the river's not moving us. But it was very pretty. You can see it was very still and reflective and very pretty. Here's another view as we went down towards the bigger part of the lake. We didn't get into the big part of the lake. It's a long lake, but it was very pretty. And we ended up getting taken out there. So yeah, this is some of the things you'd see in Eastern Oregon. This is a desert lily that we saw many of these hiking up in those hills along the side. And that's the end of what I have. So if anyone has any other questions.
Marianne, when did you take the photos again? What month?
Well, various months. The Owyhee River trip was in, I'm going to stop sharing. The Owyhee River trip was started on April 28th through May 2nd, I believe. And then the other ones in Oregon were mostly in the summer. There might have been some that were not summer.
Any recommendations as to what months you found to be best?
Well, I think that for the Owyhee River, especially, there's a very, very short time they can only run it for about 4 to 6 weeks each year because it's a desert river and it's snow melt, and then the snow melts and then it's just a trickle, not enough to put a big raft down. You could put a smaller raft or canoe. And then Crater Lake, I've tried to go there in May one time and had to not make it because of snow. I went in August or September one time and sitting on the deck of the lodge, like 30 feet from the water, you couldn't see the lake because of smoke. So it's just, Eastern Oregon in the summer is beautiful. I'd say the whole summer would be fine. As long as, but you may, you always have the chance of fire. But Crater Lake, this year, it is open now. I know in the last couple of weeks it's been open.
Okay. Yeah, I was there last year, right after Memorial Day, and yeah, it was 6 feet of snow. It was pretty inaccessible there at Crater Lake.
Yeah.
Beautiful though. What a great program. Wow. I mean, I thought it was a lot drier on the Eastern Oregon area. I mean, green and verdant.
This was an unusual year there, just like here. It's not usually that wet. It was very, very green and very wet. A lot of snow still. I mean, they do get snow. I had one other picture that I thought I had included, but on the way back from that trip, we went by, in the distance, a place called Steens Mountain, which is a very, very big mountain ridge that's high and east of Bend and all that area. And if I go there, I'll have to do this again because it looks like an amazing place. But there is also a couple of resources. There is the Oregon National Desert Association, ONDA, ONDA, Oregon Oregon Natural Desert Association, ONDA, that has a lot of information about this whole area. There's Friends of the Owyhee. I didn't mean to put that in all caps, didn't mean to yell at you folks, but Friends of the Owyhee is another organization. There is an Eastern Oregon Desert Trail that goes 500 or 600 miles through from Bend all the way over to the Owyhee River area. It's a long, I think it ends in Jordan Valley, maybe. That's a long desert trail that is really remote and not an easy trip, but people do it. the Owyhee Canyonlands is not protected. Some of you may remember a few years ago when the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge was taken over by the Bundys. Anybody remember that? They took over the refuge and set up camp there and messed everything up. Well, that was in response to an effort to make a national monument there. There was this big outcry, no monument. We're just going to take over, and they didn't want a national monument. So in Idaho, people organized and did a lot of outreach, and actually in conservative Idaho, they were able to get some legislation passed to protect some of those Owyhee Canyonlands that go into Idaho. The Friends of the Owyhee in Oregon are trying to do the same thing. They're working really hard to contact and work with all the stakeholders in the area, like the ranchers, especially the off-road people, the ranchers, the hunters, to get all these people to understand that a national monument or some kind of national recreation area legislation would protect the area, because most of the ranchers and the people there, they don't want it overwhelmed with development or extraction or anything. They want it to stay like it is, just like, we would kind of like as conservation-minded people. So the Friends of the Owyhee are working hard on getting enough local support for legislation in Congress. And I believe there is a bill that they're working on. I don't know if it's been introduced, but they're working on it. And so you can look up the Friends of the Owyhee and get more information that way. But those are some resources on this whole area. And then of course, tourism places and all that kind of. Bend, if you looked up the city of Bend, I'm sure they have a lot of tourism resources.
Couple of other questions. Are there tribal lands in the area? What are the reservations or tribal nations that are in the area?
I know there are some, and I couldn't tell you the names, but the Friends of the Owyhee are definitely working with the local tribes.
Right. And the other thing that's interesting to me, do any of the historic pioneer trails go through the area? The Oregon Trail, does that go that far north, or is it further south? And maybe
I think it's further north, because this is not that far north.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Still there. Amy Clayton's an Oregonian. If she's still online here, maybe she could tell us. But that's kind of an interesting thought about where that comes in and goes over the Cascades or through the pass.
Yeah. Let's see. Just looking at my map here. Yeah, I think that the Oregon Trail might go a little bit farther north.
Okay.
This is pretty far south in Oregon. Not too far over the border from Nevada. Well, it's a ways, but not too far.
I know everything kind of diverged in, before the California Trail hit Elko, the trails all kind of diverged. We had another question in the chat. Does Lou's iPhone, does the PCT trail go through these areas?
It does not. The Pacific Crest Trail goes pretty much on the crest of the mountains from up through the Sierras, and then the crests of the Cascades. So it probably goes up maybe a little bit to the west of this area, up through the more in the mountains, when it's called the Crest Trail, because it goes on the high mountains, and this is quite a ways east of that.
All right.
But the Oregon Desert Trail does go from Bend east through all this stuff.
Interesting. Such an interesting
Yeah.
area.
It really is.
Mhm.
So, all right, well,
Next week, next month, let's put a plug in.
okay,
John St. Clair is going to be doing a trail talk on his trip to Peru and his hike along the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. So that should be fascinating.
I think that's August, right?
Yeah, July. He's going to do July.
Is it? I mean, I thought July was something in Scotland or something like that. I'm
Oh,
looking-
Norm, are you still on? Are you still set for July?
I won't take it personally that I've been.
Oh, then we've gotten out of order. You can do July and we'll have John do August, and I was going to do a presentation then the following month, which would be September, about history and impressions of Yellowstone and Grand Teton this year.
Oh, cool.
So because I just came through there. Yeah, okay, John or Norm, if you're gonna do July, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
Hiking the hiking in the UK. Anything to add, Norm, about your program, what you have planned?
No, not really. It's all done.
Fabulous. Love it. Okay.
Ready to go.
So July, Norm.
Yeah, it's, if you check our San Gorgonio chapter website under events and outings, the July one is up there. August is not yet,
Okay.
but it will be up there along with other things. And yeah, keep checking the website. I
Yes.
don't know who else heard this earlier before everybody came on, but we just had a really successful overnight at Joshua Tree on Sunday night. We had 25 people come and look at the stars as they came out. It was really cool. So
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful time of year.
I'm going to make one more plug. As long as I've got everybody here. As you know, I'm chair or I was chair of San Gorgonio chapter, but I'm still chair of Sierra Club California. And right now the legislative session is happening. I think there's a little break right now, but between now and the mid-September, there's a ton of legislation happening. And our staff is working on, last I saw, there's about 140 bills that our staff there is following. And we have about 30 or so that are considered priority bills that they're watching very closely and influencing, but there's about 140 that they're actually following, that it's not only the priority bills. So I've just put a link here in the chat for the homepage there. And if you're not already getting the notices, sign up, go to that link. It says join. Well, at the top, it says join California activist email list, and you can do that. Below that, it says sign up for free semi-monthly updates on what's happening. And that is where you would get an email during the legislative session saying, we need you to call your legislature's office, later your assembly member or your senator's office, and tell them, please vote yes or no on this bill or these bills today. And you'll get that notice to call them, and it'll tell you who they are. It'll give you the phone numbers, and it'll tell you what to say, but it will help get good bills passed and bad bills not passed in the legislature. The more people that we have doing that, the better. So I'd encourage you to go to that link and sign up and take action when you get the action alert. Any other questions or anything?
Just want to plug Norm's presentation just one more time. Will be July the 19th, the third Wednesday in July, and hiking in the UK. So Norm, that's going to be a wonderful time. And Marianne, thank you for such a beautiful presentation. What a wonderful set of photos. I have not been in the area. I know many people on this have been, but I have not, and learned a lot about what's there.
It's wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you. It's just one of those places that you just, once you get there, it's like, okay, I got to go back and explore some more.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is Deb Nelson. I used to work for the Forest Service on the San Gorgonio. I was on the San Bernardino National Forest for about 8 years as a botanist. And I did a lot of environmental review for projects and things that were happening on our forest. And I don't know if everyone is aware of what is in the new budget proposal that apparently there's bipartisan support for, which is good, but there's a little piece of it that really worries me. They have set that I hope people are aware of. They have President Biden has agreed to setting aside a separate agency for environmental review for NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, and with the goal of streamlining the review, so streamlining in quotes the environmental review. And I'm very concerned that if we have folks that are not concerned about the environment, that are in control, that that streamlining could end up impacting a lot of areas that we've worked really hard for a lot of years to protect.
Okay. I'm not fully informed on this, but if I'm going to put my email in the chat here, so you actually probably have it from the emails I sent.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Send me an email about that, and we have that would be something that our national political team would be working on.
It's something that it seems to me that no one's paying attention to. It seems, kind of inconsequential probably to a lot of people, but working on NEPA teams for many years, I know how important it is to do that review, that, cross interdisciplinary review of projects. And I know that some people have been working to streamline, in quotes, that process for a long time.
Yeah.
And to me, that kind of means circumventing the process.
Let me check in with our national conservation people, that we do have people that work on this stuff, and I would imagine, and I know I've seen some stuff about this in various emails from our Wild America people. So let me look into that and get back to you.
Okay, I'll send you an email.
Send me an email. Yes, that would be helpful.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Hey, Marianne, this is Carla. Can you
Hi,
keep me in the
Carla.
loop on the NEPA process? Because
Yeah.
we've been hearing the same thing about streamline, and we're concerned about possibly some of these thinning projects and logging projects being kind of just rubber stamped instead of going through the proper environmental review.
Okay, let me see if I can find the right people at National that are working on this. And I'll get back to you too, Carla. Thank you. All right. Well, it's a little after the hour, so I think that I can say goodnight and thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Good
thanks.
night, Marianne. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Let's see, recording.